A crashed spaceship is expected to come back to Earth tonight. Here's what we know about it. The Vega 4 spacecraft was designed to explore our neighbor planet Venus. Back in the day, there was an intense space race between the US and the Soviet Union, and because of that, the Soviets were looking to be the first ones to explore Venus with their Vega program. The series consisted of 5 spacecraft, Vega 1 through Vega 5. The goal was to study the atmosphere of Venus from the inside. And the reason they wanted to do this is because Venus was seen as the evil twin of the Earth. It's similar in size, mass, and composition. But unlike the Earth, Venus is extremely hot, with a crushing atmospheric pressure and clouds of sulfuric acid. This is not a place where humans could ever survive. The Vega program had a lot of landings planned on Venus. There was Vega 2, 4, and 5, which was supposed to land on Venus's surface and take measurements directly. Unfortunately, Vega 2 crashed into the planet after losing contact with Earth. Vega 4, which we'll talk more about later, also crashed into Venus after being hit by a micrometeorite. And then Vega 5 just completely disappeared when it got closer to Venus. For the ones that made it, Vega 1 and 3, they managed to send back some data and images before getting destroyed by the harsh environment of Venus. Now let's talk about Vega 4, the spacecraft that will re-enter the atmosphere of the Earth tonight. It was launched back in June 1984. Its mission was to study Venus's atmosphere, but it didn't make it. The spacecraft was on its way to Venus, but halfway there, it was struck by a micrometeorite. This caused the antennas to break off, which led to a loss of communication. The spacecraft then went into a free fall around the planet and eventually landed on Venus. The mission was a failure, but the spacecraft managed to send back some data and images before going down. Now, almost 4 decades later, Vega 4 is making a return. It never should have left Venus's orbit. Scientists are actually quite surprised that it survived in the atmosphere of Venus for all this time. They think that it might have gone into a higher orbit around the Sun. It's been sitting up there in space until recently when it started to lose altitude. It started to get lower and lower, and we knew that at some point it would have to come back down. We knew it was coming back to Earth, but we did not know when. It could have come down at any point in the last 2 months. It's currently unclear where exactly the spacecraft will come down. All we know is that it will be somewhere over the Indian Ocean. There's a huge area to cover here. It's not like it'll just fall straight down. It'll most likely do a full orbit around the planet. That means that the actual landing spot could be anywhere on the globe. The thing is, it's carrying a bunch of radioactive materials. So if it lands in the wrong place, it could cause some damage. I wouldn't worry too much though. Most of the materials are inside the equipment, and they won't leak unless the equipment gets physically damaged. The only things that could potentially leak are the batteries. If the batteries get punctured, they could start leaking. They are filled with radioactive tritium, and it can cause health issues if it comes into contact with your skin, or if you accidentally swallow it. It's not deadly, but it's still something we want to avoid. Space junk is expected to land in the Indian Ocean, but this spacecraft isn't the only thing. We have no idea how many other objects are up there. Every year, tons of satellites and spacecraft come crashing back to Earth. In 2018, a rocket stage came down in a residential area. Luckily, it landed in an empty playground. If it had fallen just 1 day earlier, people could have been seriously injured. In 2019, a 3-ton rocket booster fell out of the sky and landed on a man's house. The roof completely collapsed from the impact. The rocket booster was supposed to be in a much higher orbit, but it lost altitude and ended up coming back down. Sometimes these objects are not found right away. It took years for the authorities to find the rocket booster that landed on the house, People sometimes mistake them for meteorites. And the weird thing is, scientists have no idea how many objects are up there in space right now. Space junk is constantly being created. It's estimated that there are hundreds of thousands of pieces of debris orbiting the planet, ranging from old satellites to tools that were lost by astronauts. These objects are dangerous, and they're slowly becoming a threat to our planet. If a piece of debris hits a satellite, it can damage it or destroy it. If this happens, then more space junk will be created, and the problem will just become worse and worse. Scientists are trying to figure out a solution to this issue. One idea is to build a net in space that will collect all the debris and bring it down. Another idea is to use lasers to push the debris away from Earth. They'd basically shoot lasers at the debris, and that would change its orbit. The laser would essentially push the object just like a magnet. It sounds great, but the thing is, we don't have the technology yet. Some countries are planning to mine asteroids and collect all the valuable minerals from them. The thing is, once those companies start operating, they're also going to leave behind a bunch of space junk. So even though it might seem like a great idea, it's probably not going to work. For now, we're stuck with this mess we already have. Space junk is constantly falling back to Earth, and most of it lands in the ocean. This is great because most of the world is covered in water, so the chances of someone getting hurt are really low. Also, the ocean absorbs most of the heat, so when space junk falls into the ocean, it doesn't burn up in the atmosphere. It just slows down, and then it either completely disintegrates or it lands in the ocean as one piece. It's pretty hard to track space junk. It's fast, and it's in space. Sometimes satellites collide with each other, and that creates a ton of new debris. In 2009, a 6,000-pound satellite collided with a defunct Russian missile. It was the first time a satellite was hit by another satellite. This created over 2,000 pieces of trackable debris and an estimated 500,000 pieces of smaller debris. There's a system that is supposed to alert us when something is coming back to Earth. It's called the Space Surveillance Network, and they have radars all around the world. They're used to track objects in space. The thing is, these radars aren't perfect. They can't track every single object. Space agencies around the world are constantly working to improve the system, but it's very expensive and it's hard to do. Some pieces of debris move really fast. If they entered the atmosphere at a 45-degree angle at over 25,000 miles per hour, they would be traveling at over Mach 10. This means that they would completely disintegrate before reaching the ground. When this happens, it's called atmospheric deceleration. Some space junk doesn't disintegrate, and it ends up landing as one big piece. In 2017, a 2-ton rocket stage crashed down in a small town in the US. It was supposed to land in the ocean, but it lost altitude and ended up falling to the ground. I wouldn't worry too much about the space junk. I understand it sounds scary, but in reality, we're pretty safe. A lot of it lands in the ocean and the rest of it completely disintegrates before hitting the ground. Even the big rocket stages that end up landing in one piece usually land in empty areas. If it does happen to fall in a populated area, it'll most likely just damage some property. It'll cause a bit of destruction, but it won't cause any casualties. The chance of a piece of debris hitting you is incredibly low. NASA says that it's about 1 in 10 million, and if that does happen, well, the good news is that NASA has you covered. If a piece of space junk does fall on you, NASA recommends that you sue the government. You read that right. NASA literally recommends that you sue them. On their website, they say that you need to get your lawyer ready. Apparently, you should be able to get compensation for medical expenses, lost wages, and even pain and suffering. Yeah, it seems like space junk is not something to worry about. Now watch. Why haven't we found aliens yet? Or check out. What if the Earth suddenly stopped rotating?